It's Dandadan, a show where we talk about Dandadan, an anime about the dum-de-dums. This week, Sakata, aka the Rizzler, is here, and this character is actually quite controversial. So we'll dive into the divide in the reaction to this character and see where you and I stand on this highly important and groundbreaking issue. Also, anime onlys, you guys are not ready for what is about to happen in the Kaiju arc. This is the true beginning to what Dandadan as a story is. Everything before this episode could be seen as just building up to this point. So, episode 22 is the start of a brand new arc, the Kaiju arc, which is by far the arc I am most excited to see adapted currently. And you'll see why during these final few episodes before the inevitable Season 2 announcement. But this episode starts with the introduction to the Rizzler, Sakata, who has this brilliant combination of being an utter oaf, but also quite charming because as soon as he is around other people, he blends in with the rest of them. And I like this, not only as we come to see this is like a retelling of events after the Turbo Granny arc, but it is one from the perspective of the Rizzler instead. Essentially, Sakata is shown extensively as the third wheel to the story that is Momo and Okaru's crazy, wacky, and in Sakata's eyes, spicy story. I think what I loved about the introduction to Sakata the most is that it may be one of the most endearing of the series, and absolutely, so far, is probably the most underrated. Because without words, and I don't count the singing, he introduces everything his character is about. He is an overweight oaf trope, but isn't one really to be made fun of. At least, when you think about his character more. Because as we see throughout the episode, Sakata is very talented, very interesting, and also quite funny. We first see that on his way to school. He wakes up every morning on time, makes sure he is presented as best as can be, he takes care of his hair, and just like everyone else, blends in when he gets into a crowd. That moment where he goes from singing to invisible and that transition was so fascinating to me, and a really, really great moment from Science Saru as well, because it shows just a glimpse of what was to come in this episode. Sakata is invisible to everyone. He's invisible to the plot. He's invisible to others around him. Nobody knows him. Nobody can see him, and nobody has really any thoughts about him one way or the other. But Sakata actually mirrors Okaru quite a bit throughout his introduction. He's into generally the same kind of things that Okaru is into, but with a bit of a twist. Instead of UFOs, he's into sci-fi, which you can argue is the same thing ultimately. He also is quite awkward and invisible. He isn't really bullied, which is understandable based on his invisibility to school classmates, but he has things that he likes too, and those things are actually really funny. He's into Gundam, Gunpla, and, all that classic mech anime stuff. By the way, this guy is an absolute fan of Misato, and I am there for it, but there is a duality to how he acts, which I find quirky and endearing too. He's awkward as hell, and doesn't know how to communicate or understand the finer aspects of communication. Through this, we understand he is actually quite the loner. And when he misunderstands Momo and Okaru's spicy talk, which culminates in the classic 10-gallon wiener line. That is absolutely the most legendary line in all of recorded human history, by the way. It becomes apparent that, though, this genuine misunderstanding and inexperience in communication makes him desperate for communication and thus kind of stumbles into conversations, overthinks things, and that can be put off to other people. But what is so cute about Sakata, and I thought about that word, cute is definitely that. He is really endeared towards and looks up to Okaru, because he is able to hang around such cute girls like Momo, Ayase, and Ira Sneakatori, sneaking around like Solid Snake. But he wants that too. He wants to hang around with cute girls like Okaru. With no context, as Momo called him, you'd think he's a weird creep or pervert wanting to talk about spicy stuff with girls he doesn't even know about. But in reality, he is just trying to fit in. So why do I call him the Rizzler then, if he's clearly just a buffoon? Well, it's not because he's a tubby kid that everyone likes and is generally charismatic in his own way like the actual Rizzler. It is actually because he is super confident. Notice how throughout the entire introduction that Sakata didn't once put himself down or feel like he couldn't handle a social moment. He actually butted in at times, interjected himself, changed topics. He was engaged and was able to show off all of the things he's interested in as a person like Gundam. He even sang in front of everyone as well, and he is actually quite the vocalist, as you know this kid has no training, so it's kind of impressive. He's a charismatic Rizzler, but because of his inexperience, he puts all of his confidence into arguably the weirdest and wrongest things. He doesn't know. In other words, he doesn't know how to properly sell people on the vision of Sakata. He's weird, he's goofy, but he's also just a normal kid, the same as Okarun, and I'm telling you, this kid in 10 years would absolutely have all of the women all over him like he wants. And the reason he does it now is just because, well, going back to the beginning, he chooses to blend in rather than embrace himself to the fullest extent. He only does so when he is confident, which shows that probably, like 90 to 95% of the time, he's probably just blending in for one reason or the other. And that's shown throughout the beginning with him being that third wheel nobody noticed back in the conclusion to the Turbo Granny arc. Now, while I'd love to talk more about Sakata, we'll have many more opportunities later in Season 2. For now, I want to turn my attention to the introduction, or rather the proper introduction to Class President Rin. This is another character, like Sakata, who comes off a little oblivious to certain things, misunderstanding Momo's intentions with Okarun, but ultimately, she's coming from a place of just being good-natured. And if you really wanted to label Rin, you could call her the good girl of the show. She does things the right and proper ways. She's lawful good. She's responsible. She's just good-natured all around and very wholesome. So her introduction and how she clashes with Momo is interesting to me, because when you think about it, Rin is lawful good, while Momo, at least comparing her like in a bubble just to Rin, would be the chaotic good version. But they're both similar, and like Sakata and Okarun are these like weird little mirrorings. Rin and Momo would fight for the same thing, but since they both go about it differently, like Rin doing things the right way and Momo doing it her way, it causes this clash ideologically. In turn, this is a great way to highlight them both. Also, no, by the way, I'm not implying that Sakata and Rin are this couple or that the show is setting it up. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you, as that is my MO with the series that I have read before covering it here on this channel. But it is interesting because I never thought about that until this episode, actually. If Sakata and Rin are mirrors of this, like the main duo, then would these two actually work out in some way? But anyways, Rin is absolutely amazing. I love her character, and I think you will as well as the story progresses. She's fun. Her design is also just so damn good. And just for that and Sakata, I think these are Wincient's Warus, my friends. So this leads ultimately into the big climax of the episode, which is literally the rest of the episode. I liked how they dedicated this massive portion to this moment, because the pacing created this runway for Sakata to show more of his eccentric personality of being so starved for human contact of any kind that he absolutely welcomes being hit by Momo constantly. That in of itself is also an inversion of how Okarun acts around Momo's touch as well, notably when she begins to kick Sakata's butt like she did to Okarun at the end of episode 1. Both Sakata and Okarun sort of have the same reaction here. It's just that Sakata was awkward and didn't know how to communicate himself or present himself in a way that isn't creepy because he is still operating under a misunderstanding. So all of this is really just a bunch of innocence at play if you think about it, and that's hilarious. Another moment in this episode is when Sakata is made the fool by the golden ball, which is really just the kaiju in disguise. he's made out to be someone who is weak and powerless, another reminder of the trope he's based upon that will once again be subverted. In this moment, I really felt for Sakata because he just looked bad, simply put. He just seemed like, I don't know, like just a big old blubbery idiot, for lack of better words. I'm sorry. But in reality, this entire episode was one W after W for Sakata because he was right about the kaiju. He was right about the cloaking. This moment and its eventual resolution shows that the flesh... Probably should have chose better words there. The flesh aspect of Sakata, the outside looking in, the view from the window into the house looks like what it looks like. But the substance, the actual character of Sakata as a person is really impressive. Like, it really does go unnoticed with his character because he doesn't know how to convey his worth to a person or group of persons. He's just inexperienced. So, now we can talk about the big kaiju moment and the animation happening around it. And I seriously think that we need to start considering Dandadan Season 1 as a massive achievement for science, Saru, and anime in general. Because the way this show is animated and artistically shown to us is really right up there with adaptations like Attack on Titan or like Vinland Saga. They're adding things, making callbacks, which build upon history to use that as a way to further immerse the viewer. And oh god, the music, my god! Was it just me, or did the score in this episode outshine every episode in the core? The Godzilla callback with that musical motif being reused, but with a modern twist, gave me goosebumps and made the series... I don't know. I don't want to say like Dandadan wasn't already this, but it just made it feel legitimate. Like I was part of something bigger. Sort of like with Attack on Titan, with a big hype moment that happened in that series. It felt like we all were watching those moments together. It's the same thing here. Seeing the kaiju be defeated, one of the most, well, seemingly be defeated, to be fair, and one of the most impressively animated sequences melding art style and fluid motion, culminating in one of the most impressive uses of CGI as the kaiju grows in size and destroys the apartment building and looks down on them in absolute terror. It really brought me back to those hype Godzilla moments from the original movies, where the music kicks in and you just, you've seen them, you lose yourself. I'm telling each and every one of you right now, I've said this since I read the kaiju arc, by the way. If Science Saru can pull this arc off, if they can deliver on what is about to happen in the rest of this season and in Season 2, when that eventually does come out, we are going to see Dandadan take over in a way that may fill the void left by the titans of anime past, I guess, like Attack on Titan. In other words, Science Saru has the potential to do something that will cement their legacy as one of the premier studios in anime. Not for their sheer technical ability like MAPPA, but for their artistry and dedication to presenting the viewer a series in its most authentic way possible, while marrying anime original elements that make it better than the original manga as a more complete experience or package. In other words, just like with Attack on Titan's anime adaptation. Ladies and femboys, before you leave, if you are caught up to Dandadan or Chainsaw Man, please check out my other channels, Hey It's Me C for weekly Dandadan content, and Bento for weekly Chainsaw Man content. Recently, a viewer paid for the first 2 volumes for me to read from Fire Punch on the Bento channel. As well, Dandadan in the manga is currently heating up, so please check out both of these channels. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. You can check out the newest Dandadan video here on the screen for more from me to you. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.